Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Mingle Mastermind Session. We're talking today about the true cost of going sustainable. I know it's something that all of our Fashion Mingle members have a passion about. And we've got Glynn Barrish-Carroll here, who is an expert in the fashion industry and apparel production, but specifically a real passion for sustainable fashion. So thank you, Glynn, for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Short bio on myself. I have around 25 plus years in the industry. Started as a designer, have worked in all facets of the industry, from buying, designing, merchandising, private label, and in 2016 really pivoted to work only with sustainable brands and in sustainable business practices. I do still work, and I have still worked with some big brands who may not be perceived as sustainable brands yet, but I've done it in a sustainable way. And there are ways that you can just pivot. You know, Nike's got that saying, just do it. I really, truly believe, and I just want to go, just do it sustainably. So you don't even need to market yourself, but if you want to use it as a marketing tool, surely you can do so.
That's
Being sustainable to me means being ethical and inclusive. It's acceptance at all levels: race, religion, creed, orientation, capability, and your size. So that's another facet of it as well in terms of the bigger picture.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. We've also got Shireen Mobahed on today, who is our resident fashion and business attorney. And Shireen actually has a lot of clients that are in the sustainable fashion area. And so she'll be able to offer insights on the legal side of what you need to think about building that brand. Hi, Shireen. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Melissa. Hi, Glynn. Very nice to have you here today. Hi, everyone. I am definitely looking forward to this discussion. As you know, Melissa, I do work with a lot of companies in the sustainable fashion industry, and it is definitely growing. And I think what Glynn is going to have show us today is going to be some real insights that, those new entrepreneurs that are wanting to get into space really need to understand and appreciate the true cost of doing business in this space, because there is definitely some differences and some shocking things that we're going to find out. But yes, I am the founder of Rockamova Law, and we are a all-in-one virtual boutique law firm helping you build, grow, and protect your brand. So happy to be here and look forward to joining this discussion.
Wonderful. And to everybody who is on our Zoom attendance today, if you have a question, you can click the hand icon. You're also welcome to, you can let me know through chat that you'd like to ask Glynn or Shireen questions. And we can actually even move you over to the panel to talk if you have your video on. So just, keep in touch with us over chat. We also would love our Zoom attendees to share in the chat their the name of their business, your website, your Instagram, because this is an opportunity for everybody to connect. And then we also have this on Facebook Live. So if we have any questions from Facebook Live, you can actually just put your questions in the Facebook comments, and I'll try to get to those as well. So let's get started. Glynn, so you now let us know where you're located and what you actually, what services you provide in the industry right now, so everybody who's watching knows how they can connect with you and where you work from.
I'm located in Los Angeles, but due to COVID, I've got one of my global offices, my virtual office, right here. So you can always reach me somehow, and we could always Zoom. I think in person is going to open up more, although Los Angeles has opened. most of the people and companies that I've worked with in the past are back at limited staff levels with hybrid kind of work shifts. So they're not going into the office physically. I think it's a great way to connect with a lot of people in a company as opposed to a lot of people in a room if you Zoom call. So I think it works. And it's one of the things about COVID that's really taught us is to interact and to connect virtually. So I help companies pivot from non-sustainable practices to sustainable practices using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as my Bible. My mentor, Derek Zabori, who is actually the most amazing coach and teacher in sustainability, says sustainability is a journey. And, you know, he's truly got this into my head. And I'm like, yeah, it's a way to start. Where do you start and how do you pivot? There are so many small ways you can start rethinking the way of doing business. And I help the designers decide which way to go from the design aspect, whether it is currently linear and needs to become circular, which we call cradle to cradle, and then also cradle to grave, which is even imagining what would happen to your design after it was taken back, repaired, fixed, resold, rented, whichever way, swapped. Where would you like that product to land up? And there are companies out there now that you can actually send your product to who will fix it and resell it or create stuffing for fuselage, for furniture and all kinds of things. So there are more things today than there used to be in the past when I was designing. So there are more places like that too. I also help them find where to source fabrics and suggest fabrications. I also suggest sustainable trim companies to them should they need that. If they want to be connected and do a self-assessment, and if they want to learn how to do almost like B Corp level assessment, I can show them where to go and help them through that so that they can see what they need to change in their businesses to be more sustainable. I mean, the key areas, sorry, go ahead.
No, it just made me think because you've got all these resources, and I know you're in LA, and LA's got a really great fashion district. How do you feel? What are the sustainable resources in LA that that you've discovered?
Well, when I've gone to the textile shows, I've always met a lot of people. And there's certain companies that have a section of their business which is old school, just doing it the same way. But a lot of them have pivoted to 10% of their business, and maybe some people even more, to do so. Swiss Tex is one of the really great mills in Los Angeles, and Patagonia uses them extensively. There are also other resources within Los Angeles, but at the moment, due to COVID, people used to do a lot more development and a lot more in-stock goods that you could readily get, but they're limited resources. So it's a matter of calling around and really seeing who's in business still and what they have. Prices have recently gone up quite extensively because of the import, the freight costs, and also the lead times to get customized fabrics. So it's good, and it's a sustainable way to work within your environment. For your carbon footprint, it's better to buy locally. However, for pricing and for bigger quantities, sometimes you need to go offshore, but you need to allow yourself those extra almost 4 weeks right now, I believe, in terms of bringing goods in. Air freight costs have gone through the roof, and in the past, I have air freighted goods in to meet customers' delivery needs and that are lost to the companies that I was working with because we've had to avoid chargebacks for being late. But at the moment, just pat it into your timeline. I could never understand why it took 16 to 20 weeks for people to do business in the past, but I guess their supply chains padded their timelines. And, you know, in an ethical way, it really is better than putting everybody under the gun.
Okay.
So I'm quite fine with that today. It's just a matter of slow fashion per se, truly is a little bit slower than it used to be.
Gotcha. We just had Dee pop on to join us. Hi, Dee. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, guys. Hello, welcome. Glad to be here. Crazy day, crazy week, crazy month.
Yeah, I know you've got a couple of fashion shows coming up, and I can only imagine just how busy you are. But Dia is a great resource for questions regarding your PR for your fashion brand, and certainly being able to position your brand for awareness among your customers about your sustainable commitments. So we'll be able to get some insight from her as well. So today specifically, we're talking about the true cost of going sustainable, which I loved that you recommended that topic, Glynn, because a lot of times, we're, everybody wants to go sustainable, everybody has those goals, but it does cost money. And so we have to know where's the right place to put our focus so that we can affordably start reaching those goals in our own businesses. And certainly the SDGs put out by the UN gives us a lot of great guidelines. So the first thing I want you to share is just talk about what, tell us what a cost sheet is, and what we need to, how we need to use that cost sheet in order to create, optimize our sustainable options when building a collection.
So a cost sheet typically has 3 pots. First pot is the fabric that you're using and your fabric consumption. And you usually put in a small loss factor into that costing. Mm-hmm. Then you've got your trims. Then you've got your labels, tags, bags, anything that's on the garment, whether it's a zipper or a grommet, an eyelet. Then you have your labor costs, and your labor costs include marking, grading, cutting, sewing, finishing, shipping. And you normally add those 3 up, and then you put your markup on top of that, which in retail I do as an inverted reciprocal. So if I want a 70% markup, I divide it by 0.30, just retail, like my markup math. In sustainable manufacturing, you need to add testing to each of those factors. So the fabric that you buy, you need to ask for certifications. You can either send it out yourself, which is really expensive, or ask the mill to provide certifications to prove that the goods are sustainably made. There are no azo dyes. There's nothing that's going to cause harm to you as a person. You could send it out to be tested in the fabric form, or you could wait and just test the whole garment. So there's 2 ways of doing this. Then you've got your trims, and you want to make sure that they're lead-free. And there's no other harmful metals in the trims, especially a zipper that's near a crotch is really something that really has to be tested and make sure that it comes from a reputable company. And in the past, we used to use YKK as a standard because they were such a great standard for zippers. So I highly recommend them still, but there are other companies who can provide you a similar quality. You just need to make sure that they've been tested. Okay. Then your labor. So in your labor, you've got to check your factories and check your supply chain. From your cutting service to your finishing place to your shippers, everybody, you want to make sure you're working with ethical people who treat their employees fairly and pay them fairly. There are different ways of finding this out. You could do a first-party certification, which means you or one of your employees goes into the factory and looks at the facility and does due diligence as far as you can ascertain. The second way is you could send in, and this is like second party would be if you were doing private label for a brand, they may send their auditor in to have a look at the facility and to check it for all the make sure that all the things that they require, which are on their transparency page, are covered by the factory. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, third-party certification, which when I worked in the past mostly with really big brands, we were required to always and only work with factories that had been third-party certified. So there are companies like WRAP which is one of the biggest ones globally. You go in and they actually have a website where you can check the factory certification and if it's current. Typically, it's done every 2 years, but sometimes clients require annual audits. And I think it's good to do an annual audit because things can change. In Los Angeles, there used to be 3 or 4 really great factories who were certified. And at the moment, I personally only know of one who are completely certified and who, is current with it. Because of COVID, there wasn't a consistent business run through for them. And sorry, I was looking, Andrea was asking for an address. Was that RAP? I'm not sure. So,
yeah, Andrea, can you tell us which address you're asking for? Glynn, I also wondered, what's the difference between, getting, whether you're doing first, second, or third party checks on companies, what's the difference in the experience doing it internationally or doing it in a US based company? Is it, I mean, obviously I'm not counting the travel time to do something international, but is it common for you to be able to find sustainable resources for your fabrics, your trim, and be able to check up on the labor practices in the United States?
In the United States, it's easy to check. But if it's in China, Korea, Vietnam, Mexico, it's a little harder. But you have to rely on the third-party audits and to be able to verify them. And I think really almost if you can't find out, and it's not transparent on the websites, which RAP actually has all of their audits and their current audited factories listed, you need to call up and send somebody and hire somebody to go in and check. I have heard even with RAP that they've said that they were coming into an audit. Well, they don't like to tell you that they're arriving at, say, 10. So they say, we're going to be coming between Monday and Friday of that week. So you really need to be on guard for the minute somebody walks in pretty inauspiciously, and then sits down and asks for the owner and goes through the audit. And they do really deep audits going into financial records, payments, employee records, all kinds of stuff. And it's really doing a service to the employees as well as to the factory owner as well as to the brand to protect yourself, to know that should there be an issue in that factory where they find out that it's not compliant and there are bad business practices, that you know that you're working with a factory that is authentic. And there's a lot of subcontracting though, which you really can't control when it's in another country. But if it's in Los Angeles, I used to arrive randomly at factories and just walk in and go, hey guys, whether it was lunchtime, tea time, or like at the end of the day or in the morning, whenever it was always different, so that I would be able to not really surprise them, but that they couldn't prepare for my arrival. Mm-hmm. And in private label for a big brand, your responsibility and your ethical reputation is so important. So you really have to do your due diligence. Mm-hmm. And in China, you can actually get videos sometimes from factories, and you can get audits and in other ways actually to try and contact their other people that they work with and try and check that they really are working with them and what their records have been if you want to. So always ask for a reference of other clients that they work with.
Is there a website that has a good list of questions? So if a designer's trying to do their own checks, that they kind of have a checklist of what they need to ask about?
I have my own checklist that I know, but I haven't really used somebody else's. But you can go onto their websites and find out what their normal questions are. And, it's basically fair labor practices for the city, state, and country that they're in is really important. That they are treated well, that they are, there's no forced labor, there's no underage labor, they are paid the over-hour rates per the rules and laws of the city, state, and country that they work in. I mean, those are important things. There's also meant to be demarcated areas to have lunch breaks and restrooms. The toilets should be clean, and there should be a clearly marked board with all the labor rules of that city, state, and country, where the worker can see it and see their rights, as well as anybody entering the factory can do it. Another thing is I have to have their garment registration and the name of the company clearly on the outside of the building. And in Los Angeles, I'm not sure in New York, but we used to have these yellow demarcated lines so that if there was a power outage due to an earthquake, they could see where the exits were, and the exits need to be clearly marked. Also, they wanted a secondary lighting system to kick in should the power go out for an earthquake. And then simple things like at their desks, and it's interesting because I often see factories send pictures of their staff working, and I look and see, so couple of things. They should have a little bin to keep all their tools in so that it's not scattered so they don't cut themselves. They should be provided with an option of a mask. This was pre-COVID because the fibers in the air and the fabrics that they're working with, can affect their breathing capability. So those are just two small things. And then also space between machines. There should be spacing, and there should be ample walkway between them. So if they crowded into a section on top of each other, no masks, no little containers for their goodies, I immediately go, hey, you shouldn't be putting that on your website if you don't know that that's not the right way to be treating your employee. Your employee should be given like a certain safe space and a workspace to work in.
Wow, that's incredible. I never thought about all those things that we need to think about from a labor perspective and safety of the workforce. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
That. Yeah, I want to bring in Shireen to talk about the laws in the United States that protect labor, and maybe Glynn, you could take a minute to add the links of the certification websites in the chat, because I know Andrea, that's what she's looking for. And then also please add any other websites you think would be helpful for people to understand about how to check those certifications. Shireen, in the United States, obviously, we have better labor laws than some countries, and worse labor laws than other countries. So kind of give us an overview of what you've learned working with the B Corporation brands and different things that you've found in the legal world.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. Absolutely. I mean, the good thing about the US is that we do have laws that, in comparison to some third world countries that mainly do most of the manufacturing of the fashion collections that are worn and bought here in the US, is that we do have higher standards of labor practices, both on the federal level, of course, on the state level. The issue is, of course, where those things are made. So if the production and manufacturing of the clothing that, an American label is actually produced or manufactured overseas, where the Fair Labor Standards Act does not apply to those individuals and those workers. So, of course, that allows companies to get away with things that they would never otherwise get away with in terms of fair hourly time that they have to spend, the pay. Obviously, we've got the minimum, which is generally higher than most third world countries, and of course just the environment in which the workers are exposed to. But that's not to say that the U.S. doesn't have some things to work on. There are definitely situations here with respect to working with toxic materials, which exposes workers to various chemicals. Yes, there's protective measures that need to be taken into consideration when, you know, using these types of materials. But, you know, there's unfortunately a disconnect between what the FDA approves as safe or safe levels of exposure to various chemicals and toxic substances that go into the creation of fabrics and materials that are produced, and also what environmentalists and researchers have found to in fact be the case of, you know, continuous exposure, which is what workers are experiencing. Now, I just want to mention that, you know, obviously sustainable fashion is a growing trend. But another thing that, you know, fashion brands need to be aware of is the greenwashing technique. And that's obviously when, you know, when a brand claims that their clothing is sustainable in order to get you to buy them, when in fact they are not sustainable. And you know, the only way that consumers can try to decipher whether or not a brand is sustainable without knowing all the information right now is relying on certain certifications that brands can get. Now, there's good and bad, because certifications are essentially independent bodies that have created these certifications that, you know, can go into the labor, the materials, all the different aspects of creating that fashion line. But at the end of the day, it is an independent source and it's not necessarily verified. So, you know, you are left to assume certain things are true when in fact they may not be true. With labels, of course, you know, B certification is one certification that says that you're a company that does social good with your, you know, with your product. There's a list of different certifications that fashion brands can do to bring about awareness of the sustainable efforts that they put into their fashions. But as I said, at the same time, you need to be aware of greenwashing, because currently the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, which governs the Consumer Protection Act, which is really what protects us as consumers from fraudulent and deceptive practices, they are coming down on companies that have used deceptive practices in making claims that their products are, you know, biodegradable or, you know, sustainable in certain claims, and when in fact they were not. So it is starting to happen. We're starting to see that that they are taking action. So I just want to heed caution to any fashion company that is looking to get into this. Truly understand, I mean, you're going to have to be your best advocate and understand where you're sourcing, where you're manufacturing, how they're treating, you know, the workers, how they're creating the fashions and the chemicals that go into the processing. And then what happens after someone wears it and discards it, and what that does to the environment. And, you know, be proactive in this. And yes, it can be costly with respect to getting higher sourcing, you know, more expensive fabrics that are more environmentally friendly, that cost, you know, that put in higher cost of labor to create them. But at the end, if you can tell the story, and we've had a lot of experts on the show talk about, you know, the connection, the stories, if you can relate that back to the consumer, then you're going to have a better chance of having successful, sustainable fashion. And the costs that go into creating that brand, you know, can get reflected in the price of the merchandise.
Yeah, and that's always such an issue that everybody's always concerned about. Dee, with I mean, from a marketing and PR perspective, I'm sure you've seen a lot of things, you know, in the news about greenwashing and how that affects a brand's PR. What would you recommend brands have on their website and in their marketing in order to really establish themselves as a brand that's environmentally conscious?
I love what Glynn shared about like the different items, like videos pictures. I think those are important, a part of your story and your message. Like, how is the brand made? I think a really great sizzle reel from beginning to the end of how a fabric or how a piece of apparel or collection is made. Not that that kind of verifies anything, but at least it shows, okay, these are our workers. This is how they work. This is the environment they work in. This is how the fabric was made. This is where it was resourced from, coconuts or hemp or there's a cactus. I don't know, but like, where is it harvested? How did that go through the process? And how did it become a fabric? And all those things are important to the story and to your message and to your brand, to say, okay, and this is why we're green and sustainable, and really also show those certifications on your website. I think that's very key, because if you're gonna quote unquote say, hey, I am a sustainable brand, I'm certified, blah, and that's not on your website, or that's not even in your social media or your message, people are going to question you. And so it kind of like, it defeats the purpose of my job in getting you out there.
Right. That's such a good point. I mean, I think sometimes like we're so like focused on the inside of our business, we're not fully aware how people perceive us. And so we may know that we're being very dedicated to the SDGs, or following really, really strong ethical guidelines in our company, but we forget to share that. So that's a really good thing to remember. And so definitely if you're involved in any way and you have any certifications, and just like really spend the time developing that part of your website, because that will help bring you business. Yeah, I want to thank Catherine for joining us. Catherine was on a panel today that ran a little late. So thank you for hopping over as soon as you could. We really appreciate that. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm glad to be here. We had a good discussion about bridal and sustainability too, because we were talking about fit issues. So it was like, what's fit got to do with it? And that I started right out of the gate saying, if you don't have the proper fit, 58% of garments are returned because of that. And that's what's causing all this backlog of unused garments that are winding up in the landfill. So right out of the gate, we started with sustainability.
Man, that is so important. I mean, talk to everybody a little bit about the fit issue, because that's really important for designers to understand. How do you recommend that? I know you work with a lot of different sustainable brands and hiTechMODA and the activities that you do with New York Fair Trade Coalition. How is everybody trying to address the fit issue?
Well, there are a lot of different ways to address it. And the number one thing is to use avatars when you're creating garments, so that there's a lot of samples that are made that get discarded. There's a whole process before the garment actually gets made as units, and there's too many of those units being made. But right out of the gate, use those avatars to create your garment and see the different shapes and the different silhouettes, because before fit, there's shape. You have to understand what the shape of the customer is, what the shape of the garment is, and then go into the fit issues. And it was a really interesting discussion. And I'm going to put the link up because it was recorded. And everyone said what a great discussion it was in that room, because there were two designers and a fit model. And I was moderator, but I'm more about shape and about, just making sure that the customer is appreciated for her diversity, no matter what that is. Everybody deserves to look good and to have garments that fit and flatter them. So, but that was very key for them to understand how to create that garment that they don't make too many prototypes and too many samples, because sometimes there are 20 samples made for each garment and only one of them gets used for the mass production. And that's why they have sample sales. But who's gonna, if they don't get sold, the samples go who knows where. Maybe they go to Goodwill or cycled. A lot of times they get burned and they get incinerated, and that's bad for the environment too, because
Wow.
a lot of the top brands don't want their garments, out there,
Yeah.
to bastardize their brand. They burn them, and incineration is, just as deadly for the environment.
Wow, that's a good point. Glynn, can you give us some insight to how you work with your clients and helping them make sure that they're not accidentally putting waste into the system?
Yes, this is all about the carbon footprint. And your carbon footprint is actually the CO2 that you put into an environment by your practices, either personally or as a business. And so you can buy carbon offsets, which is like deforestation, or if you travel a lot, you can, but you really shouldn't be doing that to start with. You should not create the carbon footprint that you are currently doing. So the goal is to really reduce that, so we can try and achieve this this global warming standard of no more than 1.5% by 2030 that the United Nations has set forward. And there are various ways of doing it. So what I suggest in terms of the sample making and pattern making and all these things, I think that going to the 3D technology really is the future of this, and that there are companies that you've showcased and that we all know of who do this as a service, and you're paying about 50% of the cost of actually cutting, sewing, and making a sample from its first iteration to get it to production. In the ones that I've costed out with and I've worked with, and I've tried to, dig deeper and get their true facts. And they're working across the market, from shoes to housewares to homewares to clothing. So it's all facets of business can be done this way. And you can also pre-market and get a read on your product before taking it to market or putting it on your website and cutting, 300 to 1,200 pieces. It's a great way of cutting down your carbon footprint in that case. Typically, well, there are two ways of doing it. You could create your pattern with your own specs and hand it over to a 3D company who then does the 3D part of it, or they can create the pattern through the 3D garment. So you save about, in Los Angeles, the person quoted me about $100 difference between giving the pattern and not giving the pattern, and that's for something simple. So if it was an evening gown, it would possibly take $150 labor cost to make that one pattern. But if it was a T-shirt, it would cost less. So he kind of averaged it at savings of 100 if you gave him the pattern versus him making the pattern. And I'm not sure what the other brands are charging for their services in this case, but the one that I spoke to, because I was really so intrigued by it and thinking that this truly is the way to be most sustainable, those were his costs. So it averages out to about $65 an hour, time-wise, and you have to put this into your garment, but you do save on your first samples and all the way through actually selling the garment. In terms of what Sharon was talking about with the fabrics, and I watched True Cost again last week, which was the movie, which showed the Rana Plaza incident, and then they showed workers in India working with GMO modified cotton. And the lady was talking about how she felt it was like a cycle that was planned. And she felt that, and I don't know if other people caught it, but Bayer owns Monsanto, and Monsanto supplies the seeds, and Monsanto supplies the pesticides for the seeds. And a lot of the people working with these GMO modified cottons are getting very ill, and their families and their children are being born deformed. And she put it in there without saying it, that it's interesting how they kind of enslave them in this cycle of supplying them with the seeds, then supplying them with the pesticides, and then saving them with the medicine. And it's just such a cycle, and you kind of wonder, how do people live with themselves, if they're creating this? And I just, it was such an alarm for me, and I just felt, how do you take them out of this? So there shouldn't be a choice of going sustainably or non-sustainably. You need to go sustainably. You need to buy certified organic cotton. You need to make sure that your fabrics are tested and not harmful to other people, because this is humanity, and we're about to go into the ecological age, and it's basically people for the planet as opposed to profit over people. And I think that for too long we've been kind of this hamster in a wheel, kind of just carrying on this like belabored and old school business model of constantly needing to make more profit and constantly needing to achieve that profit. So what happens to try and achieve that profit? Supply chain squeezes everybody down to the bottom, and the worker really suffers. And then at the end of it all, the manufacturer or the retailer may still take their big markup and their big margin, but they've made even more profit by squeezing the supply chain. And in a lot of cases, I've heard that people are incentivized to create more profit, to make their investors more profit, and to have them invest more in them and believe more in them because they're profitable and they're making great returns. However, the same team is incentivized to do so and are bonused on those things. So it's been bonused on the profitability. So it's really a really difficult situation. I think that those business practices are archaic. I think Patagonia is one of the best examples of a company that is B Corp certified and really walks the walk, because a ton of other people, and I went looking at different websites of major brands that, this week, and they do have transparency, but a lot of them are under construction, the websites. And I think that they should be more transparent to be able to do it. Surely somebody can just put in the facts on the website, and so that other consumers can make a conscious choice. You really have to vote with your wallet today, and you need to be aware of all these factors, because it's no longer just the me generation where you're consuming and using and abusing. You need to really think of how you can make the conscious choices and be part of a humanity for our future and for our children for the future, because sustainability is really creating a future possibility for everybody as opposed to the path that we've been going on. So it needs to really change.
Can you share with us, for designers who are just starting out on this journey to become more sustainable, can you give them some recommendations on what are the easiest ways to enter into this area, that that every designer should be able to accomplish?
Yeah, I think designers, number one, when I work with, I actually guest lecture at a couple of fashion schools, and I enjoy that thoroughly because it's so nice to see their fresh take on things, and they're all very interested in sustainability, and a lot of them are more interested than any other sphere of people that I talk to. Circular design. So when you create your design, don't imagine it for the one-time wear and the one-time way of wearing it. The more convertible and more adaptive it is, the better. And also imagine its second life, possibly its third life, its fourth life, and its fifth life when you send it to a company like reworn.com, who will fix it and mend it and then repair it and pass it on, or maybe refabricate it and upcycle it completely. And then imagine it going to be broken down into yarn. So if you can imagine your garment, say it's a t-shirt. Okay, I'm done with the t-shirt. I'm going to cut off the sleeve. I'm going to cut a pair of my pants. I'm going to put the hem of my pants as my sleeve now, make it more a fashion top, or I'm going to crop it and add fabric and make it a sundress. or I'm going to splice it, cut it down with another t-shirt and make it into 2 t-shirts, create the next design. One of the brands I work with is called Kingdom, and she's brilliant at what she does in design, because every garment, well, not every garment, I'd say about 20% of the brand is designed in a way that can be adaptive. So it was specifically done for travel, but it's also gone into other industries now, which are growing. And it can be changed, like the pant can be zipped off in 3 ways to be a fashion short, a capri, and a full leg pant. The skirts can be zipped off, the dresses can be zipped off. So it's basically go away for a weekend, take the shirt dress, one of the sundresses, and a pant, and a couple of tops, and you're done, because you've got so many outfits. So it's perfect for the minimalist to travel like that.
I love that.
So that's one way of design, is to pivot. The other thing is in your labels and tags, try and use recycled, if you have a choice, sit with your supply chain, sit with your trim department and say, I'd really like to pivot to using recycled fabric for my labels, and I'd like to do recycled paper for my tags. And then try and use dyes and prints on them that are also eco-friendly. And one of the biggest ones in Los Angeles that I worked with for many years is Progressive Label. And they have a whole section of it, but there are many others. You just need to check. And almost all the label and trim companies started to pivot about 2 years ago to offering a sustainable part of their business. And it wasn't readily available. It was higher minimums, but now I'm sure that people have brought down those minimums, and that they're flexible, more flexible after COVID. Even like your hang tags. So that's another thing. When you work with a big brand or you work with a big chain, and they give you a guide of their requirements, and we need this type of hanger, we need this type size bag, and we want these 3 languages on it, etc. I've actually negotiated for brands to say, no, we're not going to be giving you that hanger specifically, but I have the exact shape in a recycled plastic hanger. And they've done it. Instead of putting a Swift tag onto a garment at the back of the neck to attach the price tickets or whatever, we've actually punched it and put it on with a sisal cord or a rope, a cotton rope. For the bags, you can buy biodegradable bags or recycled plastic bags, whichever is more readily available to you. I really think too that there should be, and Melissa, I'd love you to do it, some kind of place on your website where people can put up their needs and they can collaborate on minimums, because there's still big minimums in a lot of items, and a lot of the small designers need to share. And again, like Kingdom Shop did these biodegradable bags that are big enough to put long dresses in and pants, but a t-shirt can also go in with just a simple 1 fold, or a pair of pants can go in 3 fold, or a dress can go in easily too. And she bought extra, and she's actually shared with other sustainable brands when they've needed biodegradable bags. And I believe she still has more. So if you ever want biodegradable bags.
I love that you mentioned that, because, you know, we're always with Fashion Mingle, we're trying to understand, like, what are people's pain points, what are the problems, and then create a technology solution to fix that. So that's going to be on my list. I've got a technology team that I'm talking to about helping us build out these different tools. So I'll definitely follow up with you to pick your brain on that.
You're welcome.
I love it. I love it.
Part of my favorite thing, number 17, partnerships for the goals.
Yes.
I think the more we partner and the more we work together,
yeah,
the better we can achieve this goal.
That is so true. Well, before we wrap it up, we want to get your insider information on, you know, how wholesale and retail works, and fast fashion. I know you've got some amazing insights on what's going on in the retail world. So share with us some of the things that you think are important for consumers as well as designers to know.
So there's a common misperception of fast fashion specifically trying to harm the environment. and it's not necessarily so. Fast fashion really is speed to market in the old school way of determining it. But it's also being given, the name's being given to retail chains who are perceived as being cheap and unethical. Personally, I work with both levels of business over the years, and the fast fashion chains tend to work like a usual boutique with a 2.3 to 2.5 markup, whereas the bigger chains work on a much higher one, sometimes up to 5. So they're perceived as doing well and being ethical and being environmentally sound, whereas the fast fashion brand is really passing on the price to the consumer. So the issue with doing fast fashion sustainably means that they can actually almost meet the price of doing regular production because the units are so much higher in their industry because they've got more stores and more distribution. And the savings cost in labor is typically on how many units you do. So 1,200 used to be the minimums. Then it became 300s. Now some people are flexible down to 120 of a style. Fast fashion, I believe, is still going to do 2,000 to 5,000 units as a test and may come back with 10 to 20,000 units. So when you amortize the costs of testing and working with certified factories, it really doesn't add up that much when you break it down into those many units. Where it does hurt us in sustainable fashion is we typically do a smaller scale and a smaller business model of production, so that we do pay the higher cost because that's where the cost factor comes in. Cutting in a sustainable, ethical way, $300 a cut. So if you're cutting 10 pieces, you're paying a lot of money. But if you're cutting 3,000 pieces, you're not paying very much. So that's where the difference is in the true cost of doing the business. There's also a lot of companies who are doing do good companies, which are giving 1% of profits. And I really truly believe that we should put, like we put a fixed overhead into our cost sheet, and we put a percentage of damages into our cost sheet, we should start putting this percentage for the environment in our cost sheet, so that we find places to support who are doing great things for the environment, whether they are environmental companies, environmental agencies, or businesses that we want to support who work with artisans. I mean, there's so many different things in this movement that you can really place or advocate to collaborate with. Whether this month it's Pride, so we actually, what the brands are, a bunch of brands I know are collaborating on a Pride initiative, which is fantastic that they're giving a percentage away. Last month, because India was having a huge surge in COVID, a lot of the brands decided to donate to an organization in India that was trying to get money to help. Yep. So the more we can help other people outside just ourselves and just dealing with our own profitability, the better. And I think the better and the more goodwill you're really garnering, in the consumer world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wonderful.
It makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I put your Fashion Mingle link in the chat for people to follow up with you if they need help. But can you give us like a quick rundown of the services that you provide?
So I basically help brands pivot from non-sustainable to sustainable practices. So it is everything from design through production. I also help them align with like-minded other brands, if they're events, pop-ups, fashion shows, things that I believe that they should work together on and they should be aware of. Also check websites and make sure that they are putting the right information out there. And also even in terms of sourcing tags, trims, fabrics, I'll get involved and actually do my due diligence if I feel they're not getting the right answers. So I won't let somebody greenwash factories. I'm also going to do my due diligence there. We used to have one factory in Los Angeles that was fair trade certified, but unfortunately he is no longer. I've just asked them, please, can you try and get another factory certified? And I don't know if there are any on the East Coast, but most of the fair trade certified factories are in other countries. So that really adds to the carbon footprint. So we would love to have a couple in the US if anyone's out there, factory owners. And maybe if a group of us got together, a group of companies got together, they could help offset the cost of being certified. Because I think that's another big burden on the factory and or on the brand to pay for that every year. So the more people who use that factory and share the factory would be better.
That's so great. Well, definitely Fashion Mingle wants to do everything we can to help communicate these messages and these resources out. And, let's see how we can work together in the future to, help our designers and help our producers, manufacturers reach these kinds of goals easier. There's a lot of work to do. And I really thank you so much for making this such a big part of your career and the expertise that you're offering.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate all of you. You're great. And in the last year, my Fridays have been definitely, I'm not doing anything between 10 and 11 a.m. and West Coast time because I have to be on Fashion Mingle. I have to watch TV. I want to be current. I want to be relevant. And I think that you really bring all those things to anyone watching. You're an unbelievable platform. And I can only wish for more success for all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And, it is really important to us that we provide this mastermind series to help our members, share their expertise. And so, definitely share this series with your colleagues so that more people can get access to amazing resources like Glynn and Shireen and Dee and Kat. And of course, we have several of our longtime members in attendance today. So thank you guys for supporting us as well. So everybody have a good weekend. And hopefully the heat will go down for you a little bit, Glynn, out there in California. Stay safe from the fires and the heat waves.
Absolutely. And I hope that it's cooler in New York than I think last weekend was.
I think we're
very warm.
we have nothing to complain about compared to the West right now.
I got to say one thing though, but for almost 25 years, I spent 2 weeks of every month in New York. So I know it well.
Wow. That's
my fast fashion days.
That is a lot of travel.
Yeah, it was a lot of travel. So I kind of feel like I know it better than Los Angeles because you don't walk and you don't go out here, you drive everywhere. So in New York, I love the city and I love Brooklyn these days. I always want to go over to Brooklyn for some reason. I don't know.
I just had a great conversation this morning with one of our new Fashion Mingle board members about starting to have some live events in New York City. So I got pretty excited about that. I know Catherine and Dee are having events for Fashion Week, and then Dee's actually doing Hampton's Fashion Week. So I'd love for you guys to take a minute to tell us, how your fashion show productions are going, what you need, if you need volunteers, if you need more designers, hair, makeup, and then how people can actually participate.
I just placed an ad for volunteers and we got bombarded. So my assistant is sifting through that. We have our models being submitted. So we're doing castings and fittings at the same time, starting the week of the 28th and then after July 4th. So it's just been crazy, but we do have our hair makeup people. We have a celebrity stylist who's doing the background. We hired a production manager who's very seasoned, and she's going to take care of the chaos in the back. But so far, so good. We have some really great celebrities who RSVP'd. It's a 2-day event in Southampton, and then we're going to do a shopping event the day before. So a lot of stores are going to be participating with us. And then Times Square Fashion Week. Oh, and by the way, it's August 7th and 8th. And then for Times Square, it's September 12th. It'll be at the heart of Times Square. And then we're going to have a yacht after party. And then we're going to be featuring Cesar Galindo at that event. We are going to have the double-decker bus touring September 14th with press designers on the billboards. And then we have some other surprises that we're going to be announcing.
Sounds really fun.
Yeah.
So Kat, what are you doing?
Well, we're doing a walkthrough today at the Edison Theater, which is where we're going to have it on the 10th and 11th of September. I'm calling it Lights Up the Theater of Fashion. So it's going to be like comeback catwalk. We're all, very excited about the age of reopening, and there's a lot of excitement around it. And I think one of the things that I have started to do is create new music and create other aspects for other things besides, the makeup artists and the models and the designers, but also some musicians. So we're having the MODA Music Bank. So if anyone has any original music that fits on the runway, it's really a great opportunity to get it out there, kind of like clubs did with sampling the tunes. And I have about 50 new tunes that are going to be on the runway. And, having that live stream going up, and, that you can't have music used that doesn't have usage, as Shireen would knows about. So we are giving another opportunity to musicians. So it's been fun for me to music curate too. So anyone who wants to participate, just go on hiTechMODA, and there's applications for everything. The models are pretty well cast. I'm still working on a little bit of the sustainability aspect, still has to be fleshed out. And I really want to get some meaningful people in there. I was talking to Glynn, about kind of get some real meaningful contributions so that we're not greenwashing that aspect of the runway. So it's a really interesting time for everyone now to really put their thinking caps on and to collaborate. The sustainable goal, the number 17, Glynn is absolutely right. We are nothing without each other. And I love everyone on the panel. I love all of the Fashion Mingle people, and my life is enriched by knowing all of you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to participating in the fashion shows and see what other kinds of events we can start having in New York City and hopefully around the country next year. So everybody have a great weekend. It was nice to see you all, and thanks so much for sharing all your expertise, Glynn. It was a remarkable discussion.
Thanks, Melissa. You're welcome. And remember, being sustainable, I don't know if we're still on, means
we are.
Ethical and inclusive. I think Catherine wasn't here for this. So it's acceptance at all levels, based on no discrimination of race, religion, creed, orientation, capability, and size. It really needs to be inclusive, and remember that all people are humans and we're connected as humanity.
Beautiful.
And it's just good for business.
It is good for business. That's absolutely true.
It really is. Everybody's shopping, everybody's feeling good. So that's it.
I was at Abbott Kinney this week, and it was busy. So just to let you know, that's a good sign, because it hasn't been busy or as busy as it used to be, but it looks like it's turning around, coming back. So the stores are trying to be proactive. There are a lot of little storefronts open still, but I'm hoping that they're going to be filled. So, yes, and I'm hoping that New York's picking up too.
Yep, starts.
Yeah, everybody's embracing each other, saying, "I'm fully vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated." It's so funny when you're embracing and kissing each other. You have to say that disclaimer.
Hi, how are you? I'm vaccinated.
It's liberating. Yeah.
So crazy. Vaccinated.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay, bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.